Anti-Afro Svengalis. I wanted to address a couple of situations, and I'm not going to do two videos on this. I'm going to put it together in one video. Look on the screen here and ponder and appreciate our freedom of speech. There's another aspect to free speech that some segments of our society find incredibly difficult to manage. That it's universal, it's not exclusive, and it comes with limits. Those who have difficulty grasping those two concepts struggle with their free speech rights. Free speech rights can be misused, they can be exploited, they can be taken advantage of. They can cause you a great many problems if you do not know the limits of free speech. Along those lines, I'm going to tell you a situation that occurred. It's probably easier for me to explain what happened rather than just tell you the conclusion. So this is about a year ago. I was in a chat, and I'm not going to mention the names of the chat so we can avoid distractions. And there was a person there who I'd seen around the avatar. I've never had any discussion with this person. Person's never said anything to me. I've never said anything to them. I'm sure you all are experiencing the same. There are people who you just never communicated with. You don't have any feeling about the person one way or the other. I had never heard this person speak, but I'd seen the avatar. So this person greets me in the chat. And I have this odd feeling. Something seemed kind of weird. I mean, out of all the people, why would this person now greet me in the chat? Okay, so I said hi, returned the greeting, but I had a very strange feeling about it. So a couple days later, I get notified of this person, these screenshots, and the email wanted to know, do you know this person? Like, what's up with this person? I said I'd never spoken to this person. The screenshot that I got, this person mentioned my name in a negative way. Now, I'm going to distinguish, and I know some people don't want to admit that there is a difference. There is a difference between someone just talking crap about somebody. That happens all through these YouTube streets. And mostly people don't really care about general talking crap about you. But there is a difference when people start shit with you. Those are two different situations. Talking shit is basically par for the course, especially in these particular YouTube streets. And people typically will respond or not, or they'll ignore it. Most of the time, I don't pay it any mind. Even when it comes down to certain name calling, whatever. People do that. But starting shit with someone is a whole different element. So this is how I take this. You're not mentioning anything about a person. You're not, per se, the topic of anything going on. The person on their own decides to start just mentioning you independently of anything else that happens. I call that starting shit with someone, especially if the person's never even mentioned your name. So this is how I took this from this individual. I'm like, what is going on with this? So a couple days later, this is over the span about a week and a half. Back in the original chat where the person first greeted me, and then someone wrote something to the effect, when are you going to start your channel? People tend to realize when you say start a channel, that means starting videos. And the person said, oh yeah, I'm getting there, or something to the effect. And then the host said, yes, don't forget to let us know, or something. So this person was very clearly starting a channel. And I'm going, that's what it is. This person, for their safety and security of getting a jump start on their channel, has to be talking shit about me. And I'm not mentioning Gerald's name on purpose. The person was talking about Gerald as well. I'm going to hold off on that for a second. So the person finally gets the channel or the videos going. And of course, the person's mentioning my name, bringing me up just on his own. And I'm going, talk about a loser. Now, this has gone on for a year. And during this time, this person was also talking all kinds of shit about Gerald. I talked to Gerald. Is this some dude from the past? No, I have never spoken to this person. There are times Gerald was on those panels. It used to drive me nuts. At the very least, maybe I don't recall if Gerald said he ever responded to anything that he stated, but he's had no like real interaction with the person. So this person is making all of these just bullshit comments, starting shit that's unjustified. So here we go. Now, this is what you would call harassment. You don't have no issue with the person. You're not just doing your basic talking shit in general, which everybody does. Separate and apart, you're starting crap about somebody who has never mentioned your name. And no one here can tell me, I'm going to challenge anybody, that you would take kindly to that. Who? Who's going to take kindly to it? And let me tell you what was even more offensive. The person came up on a panel today. I'm not going to mention the panel. Sanitize in terms of what I'm presenting without any influences of names. Gerald was up on the panel first, I'll clarify, and then he sees the person in the chat and decides to request the person to come up. And I pretty much knew what was going to happen because I could tell by the way Gerald posed the question and how he was sounding. He decided to confront this person. The person finally came up there. He said he wanted to ask him some questions. So that occurred, and the person didn't take very well to it. The person starts to try to flip the situation around rather than admit what he did. You were starting shit with someone who said nothing about you. That's foul. That's bullshit. It's disrespectful. It's not something that you would take kindly to, but you did it anyway. It's what we call bullying, the true definition of bullying. And this person tries to run the guilt trip saying that Gerald was emotional, had his feelings hurt. But let me be clear about something, very clear. A person who has sat by and essentially said nothing for an entire year while somebody is starting shit with them or continuing to try to start shit, which means they want a response back, the characterization of emotional and sensitive wouldn't apply. Since the person wants to place a negative characterization on sensitive and emotional, I'll just go with that person. Although I don't look at those terms of being derogatory, but this is how the person meant it. So if you want to take that characterization in a derogatory context, the person who was sensitive and emotional about it was a person who had a reaction and got on the defensive when he was asked about it. Could this person have endured that? Based on his response today, stands to reason that the answer would be no. I could think of some other terms to describe somebody who has essentially said nothing in response to this person continuously trying to start shit with him. I would call that a patient person. I would call that a mature person. So let's compare, because this person is using the words emotional and sensitive in a derogatory context. And we know where you're trying to go with that. But who was the person who exhibited emotionality and sensitivity in response to being confronted for the first time about trying to start shit over the course of a year? It would be the aggressor. I wouldn't at all consider it getting in the middle of Gerald and this other person, because this person frequently intertwined our names. So yeah, I have a right to speak up and say something about this. And I want to make this final comment to this person. You thinking that you can continue trying to start shit with me, it's going to be a very unpleasant experience. And I would strongly suggest that you turn your attention elsewhere, because what you did was bullshit and it's cowardly. You are trying to start shit with me, someone who doesn't know you, someone who never mentioned your name, someone who never had a conflict. This is not about talking general shit about someone. You are specifically trying to start mess with someone you do not know. And that's bullshit. This is not going to be fun and games. This is not something you're going to be able to capitalize on. I suggest you turn your attention elsewhere. As far as Gerald Palmer goes and you saying, I'm his handler, no, it sounds like you're the one that needs a handler. You don't know how to act your age. You're extremely immature. You don't have any confidence to build a channel without starting shit with somebody. What is your issue? Sounds like you're the one that needs a handler. So let me move on to this other situation. This is a person who is working for the US government. Now, if I was to come out and say what this person does for a living, and if I said the person's name, it wouldn't be doxing. This person's name is on Google. It's all over the place. It would not be doxing. I don't want that distraction either, but let me say this. A person who comes onto the internet and announces that he has a security clearance and tells you the level is not a wise person. This person has a serious discrepancy between what he does on his job and what he does here on YouTube. And when you have a security clearance and you have a discrepancy like this, you're the person that's placing yourself at risk. You are the one that harassed Gerald Palmer in his place of worship. You did that. That is something that's putting your security clearance at risk. You're going to religiously harass a person. Yes, what you did is harassment. And if this church ever decides that they want to initiate a complaint, you're going to have a lot more problems than you already have. And as far as the FBI being involved, if this is even true, and I'm not sure I believe it's true, if the FBI is involved, they're involved. I'm not sure I believe anything this person says because this person, again, has a huge discrepancy between what he does for a living and what he's doing here on the internet. Another case of initiating harassment on a person who didn't say your name, never mentioned you. You initiated harassment upon Gerald Palmer, leaving messages on somebody's website where they worship, where they practice their religion, harassing the church itself. Now, let me tell you what's going to happen. If there is FBI investigation, you don't think they're going to go talk to the church and look at phone records and see who is making those phone calls? And wouldn't it be a surprise if this person was the one calling? They'll find out. So that doesn't make any sense that Gerald Palmer would be in trouble for something that you did. You were the one that started harassing Gerald. You did that. These subjects out here who want to run around here and try to paint themselves as victims after they initiated harassment and attacks on other people. Where does it say that anyone is required or should or needs to accept this treatment? You don't. If you decide that you'll accept the treatment, that's your decision, but you can't make that decision for other people. Everybody has a right to stand up and say, this is some shit I'm not tolerating. And as far as somebody wanting someone to lose their job, that is not a guilt trip you can put on the person who is filing a complaint. The person who's engaging in the behavior, that is something you need to address with them. This guilt tripping simply doesn't work. If people don't want their jobs called, if they don't want to be reported to law enforcement, they need to conduct themselves accordingly. And I get the frustration from these people who have such an issue with their jobs being called, with law enforcement being called. They are frustrated because they have not been able to get us to engage in the reciprocal conduct. So when they make phone calls, they're calling and they're lying. Again, that's not our problem. If you're calling law enforcement and lying, if you were telling your superiors a lie that somebody's harassing you, you're full of shit. You're the one that started this crap. You're the one that kept it up, kept it going for an entire year. Don't you think that they can get records from YouTube if they really wanted to look into what was happening and track your actions? Yes, they can do that. And no telling what will happen. I mean, it's ridiculous. I have no idea how long this person has had a security clearance, but as we know, security clearances are renewed. Security clearances have a timeline. But let me tell you what else can happen. The government can decide at any time to reinitiate a security clearance. They can do whatever they want to, especially if they get reports of behavior that is a concern. They don't have to go by a timeline of 5 years. They can reinvestigate at any time. When you're online engaging in religious harassment, harassing people at their places of worship, that's a potential hate crime. Combine it with all the other statements this person is making, you are putting yourself in jeopardy. This is not anyone else's responsibility. So the person out there who keeps warning about, there's one particular person to keep saying, "Oh, you mean to tell me you're gonna be happy that they lost their job?" Pose the question to the people who are engaging in the contact. Do you mean to tell me you're going to be happy when you lose your job? You should ask them that. And the response should be, well, no. Well, then what is the reason that you're doing shit that could get your job removed, that can get your security clearance bumped down or removed? That is a question you have to answer. But in the meantime, we're certainly not taking responsibility for people who are engaging in illegal acts online. You're not going to guilt the targets. There may be some people out there who will let you guilt them. I'm not one of them, and I know Gerald isn't. If you don't want people calling your job or the cops, you need to not engage in unlawful conduct. Those days are over. We saw how people were harassing me for how many years. I ignored them until they started initiating these threats of violence, rape and murder and all this shit. I'm not putting up with any of that from anyone. And let's differentiate between a uncontested threat of violence and mutual combat, whether it's virtual or offline. If you claim somebody is threatening you and then you threaten to also do something to them, then it's mutual. Uncontested threat, that's called uncontested harassment. And those are the types of threats that can get you in serious trouble. You cannot sit here and say that Gerald Palmer did shit to you just because he's referencing your harassment doesn't mean anything. You've already conducted yourself in the reprehensible manner for a whole freaking year. A whole year you engage in this bullshit, and you want to sit here and say that you're being harassed, you're being doxxed, your ass is not being doxxed. I could say your name right now. It's online. You were disclosing your security clearance level, which is actually a violation. You're not supposed to let anybody know what type of security clearance you have. It's a need to know basis. Why the hell do people in this YouTube world need to know what your security clearance level is? You simply just don't think straight. And that's why you did what you did to Gerald. You thought you can get away with it. You thought it was cute. You thought it was funny. People they just don't think. And that is to their detriment. We're not responsible because you don't know how to think in the proper manner. I don't give a damn what kind of job you hold for the government. Your behavior is trash and it doesn't match up to the expectations of someone with a security clearance with the government. Who the hell wants somebody with a security clearance who's going around uninitiated, unprovoked, harassing other people? I just wanted to come on here and send this message that, again, if you're really banking on harassing people on YouTube and expecting them not to respond either verbally, whether it's online or offline, you are definitely not in the thinking business. That is going to be to your detriment. In the meantime, people, you know the drill. Buyer beware.